You're listening to In Clear Focus, a unique perspective on the business of advertising, produced weekly by Big Eye. Hello, I'm your host, Adrian Tennant, VP of Insights at Big Eye, an audience-focused, creative-driven, full-service advertising agency. We're based in Orlando, Florida, but serve clients across the United States and beyond. Thank you for joining us. While all marketers are likely familiar with visual branding, a growing number of marketers are using palettes of unique sounds and music to support long-term brand building. Product designers, too, are leveraging the possibilities of audio to give consumer technology devices friendlier personalities. Researchers have found that music is a language that people all around the world can understand. Certain types of instrumentation and rhythms convey consistent meanings, often subconsciously, working at a symbolic rather than an explicit level. Audio branding is employed by many companies that compete internationally, such as tech firms Apple and Intel, beauty and skincare giant L'Oreal, German car manufacturers Audi and BMW, and their French competitors Renault and Peugeot. But audio branding is less prevalent among domestic brands, which of course offers a novel way to differentiate from competitors. Our guest today is Laurence Minsky, an expert and co-author of the book Audio Branding: Using Sound to Build Your Brand, which describes in detail the theory and practice of creating entire audio languages for brands. Laurence Minsky is Associate Professor in the Department of Communication and Media Innovation at Columbia College Chicago, and the author of many books on advertising and marketing. He's also an award-winning marketing strategist, creative director, and copywriter, focused on creating innovative and effective branding and cross-discipline marketing solutions for many leading brands. Professor Minsky, welcome to In Clear Focus.
Thank you for having me, and by all means, call me Larry while we talk.
Will do, Larry, thank you. What's your definition of audio branding?
Audio branding is the use of sound that's ownable by the company, by the brand, to reinforce brand attributes.
Excellent. What are some of the main reasons marketers need to consider audio branding today?
I'll give you one reason why every marketer needs to consider audio branding today, and that is because of the growth of voice assistants. Right now, it's still in its infancy, but do you really want to leave your brand when there's no picture, no visual, no colors, no fonts, anything of the traditional branding sense representing your brand, and you're leaving your brand up to Alexa or Siri? In Europe, where audio branding is more advanced, the countries are smaller, there's more languages, and it gets really expensive to have a brand in every country, and you want something consistent, and you want to be able to convey it consistently. In America, as we continue to diversify our populations, that will become an issue as well. But audio branding is a much quicker way of communicating your brand. Sound communicates much faster, and sound also helps direct visuals.
So you mentioned that the practice of audio branding seems a lot more prevalent in European countries than here in the US. Is there any other reason for that, do you think, beyond the language issue?
US marketing maybe is a little bit more hard sell traditionally. Buy now, do this, all that kind of stuff. European marketing tends to be a little bit more indirect, a little bit more elegant. So there's probably an aesthetic area that helped bring it about quicker in Europe, but practically you do want your brand to cross cultures, cross borders, and sound is much quicker and easier to do that than language.
Now, when hearing you and I talking about audio branding, I'm guessing some listeners may think about jingles, that is, advertising slogans that are put to music. But I know you don't think jingles really qualify as audio branding. Why is that?
A jingle was written to carry the words. It goes back to what we just said, that in America, it was a lot harder sell. So call 1-800 whatever and they sing it out is a jingle. And so the music was secondary. The sounds were secondary. A lot of those sounds don't seem to be ownable. Some of them are, like Nationwide. That is starting to become an audio brand simply by how they use it, and they're starting to play around with how they use. Nationwide is on your side. But essentially, that did start as a jingle.
Hmm. Now, some brands, of course, do have sounds associated with them, which advertising often supports. So I'm thinking about, say, the roar of a Harley Davidson's engine. There's the pop of a Snapple lid. And of course, when you start up your Mac computer, there's a sound that accompanies that. Do you think these qualify as examples of audio branding?
Yes, anytime you use sound to help convey an attribute, it's an audio brand. The snap of the bottle for Snapple, the pop, you get reinforced when you're opening the bottle, so there's positive reinforcement there, but you could use that in your advertising. You could use that on TV, on radio, on your website, eventually on your voice assistant applications. Anytime you're using sound to help build your brand, it's part of audio branding and really should be thought through strategically.
Right. Now, one US brand that has consistently employed music as part of its brand is United Airlines, which has used George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue since 1987, I believe, at an annual licensing cost of $300,000. Larry, I know you're based in Chicago, which is United's home base. What do you like or dislike about United's approach?
What I like is Gershwin's song is very adaptable to multiple situations, and you still get it. It still reinforces. And there's a lot of positive emotion attached to that, and movement and energy and things that convey United Airlines. What I don't like is really it's not ownable by United. Anyone can license that song. It's now gone into the public domain, I believe. And so anyone can use it. It's better to start with what do you want to convey? Who are you? And then create something that you could own basically permanently.
In the book, you mentioned Intel as an exemplar of successful audio branding. Those four notes have been around for 25 years. And while Intel has modified the instrumentation over the years, those four notes have remained the same. Do you think all brands should aim for this level of discipline when it comes to their audio identities?
All branding should be disciplined if you're doing it right, strategic and thought through. A brand is not solid where you don't tweak it over time. The best way to maintain a brand is to evolve it slowly, imperceptually, so it stays up to date and it works in multiple areas, but still conveys the values and the enduring attributes that you want to convey. Good brands that manage or companies that manage their brands spend a lot of time thinking about it and doing it visually. You should do that the same way with sounds and do think of it as a long-term investment. You don't see Intel chips when you buy it, but it is a proof point for all the computers you buy with an Intel chip inside it. And that branding has helped Intel make a name and make it a proof point. What other chips are out there? What comes to mind really quickly? And you could see why Intel is so effective, because I don't think a lot of people are going to come up with other chip makers that give them as much reassurance as an Intel when they hear that little sound.
So, Larry, I'm sure you encountered many examples of audio branding as you were conducting your research for the book. Do you have any favorite examples?
One of the examples for Royal Air Maroc from Morocco, it really captured the essence of the country. And there's a lot of different musical styles in Morocco, so they had to bring them all together. And I thought that was a very, very interesting kind of audio brand. The French Open and how they use it, I find very interesting as well. It's not just they have their audio brand that they use when they award the trophies at the end. And then they have whole environments for where you park, when you go in, retail settings. They even have an audio brand playlist for the athletes when they pick them up to drive them to the venue. So I found that interesting. La Roche-Posay, it's just an elegant kind of sound and really gets the feeling down. There are so many different examples out there of audio branding. MasterCard just came out with an audio brand not too long ago. And I do know on at least one scale, the value of their brand increased proportionally because of it. And that was the only thing they changed in their branding was their audio brand and refined their logo a little bit. It's just helping the brand differentiate itself today too. That brand, MasterCard, they did it after the book came out. But you could easily Google it and you could see the success that it has helped them.
Larry, I believe your introduction to audio branding came from your co-author, Colleen Fahey.
In a way it did, but my exposure to it actually started earlier than that. I was a chief creative innovator or chief creative officer of a small agency, and we had a publicly traded company as a client that had a pickle brand that was falling fast in the marketplace, losing market share. And the company was afraid that that would hurt their stock price, so they brought us in to stop the decline. And in our research, we found that our pickle brand tends to get eaten up. A lot of pickle brands, a lot of people buy pickles. They eat a few, they put it in the refrigerator, they might grab a few more, but eventually the pickle jar makes it to the back of the refrigerator. Pickles get soggy, they throw them out, and then eventually, maybe a back to school or some other kind of occasion, they'll buy another jar, and the cycle starts over. So we decided to promote the aspect that people love our pickle so much, they'll eat the whole jar as our benefit. So we positioned it as the emptiest jar in the house. How do you dramatize empty jars on radio? We decided to use a fork in a glass jar to hear the ting of it going in because it's empty. And our campaign not only stopped the slide of the brand, it turned it around and made it the number one in the markets where it was sold, most of its markets. And in one market, in fact, it achieved a 40% share. So I started to get curious about the sound and how it plays in terms of building a brand. And I thought that was audio brand. Then I was working on another book, a collection of essays. And Colleen and I, we come from the marketing services promotion firm, and she had written an essay a long time ago about considering that as a career. And my publisher suggested that we use it in the book. And so I met with Colleen to modernize that article. And she started talking about what she was doing with audio branding. And I learned that it was so much more than just a little logo at the end. It is a whole sound system. And one of the ways in terms of how to use it, even for packaged goods or any brand, even for a business brand, about half of Colleen's agency's clients at CCM Sun are business to business firms. And you think of all the different touch points, and it's not just consumer radio spot, which is where jingles end up, but think of the sales meeting. You bring all of your people together. You introduce the CEO with one type of music. You introduce the head of marketing with another type of music. And you come across as disjointed to your employees, and your employees need to understand the brand just as much as your consumers. So you could bring a language to this that has full flexibility, but still brings back the core notes so it conveys what they're about. So you could use it in an internal setting, such as a sales meeting. You could use it as a ringtone. You could use it on the website and voice assistants eventually, all sorts of things. So it's really a comprehensive solution. And that's what I learned when I sat down with Colleen. We got to write about this. And Colleen was doing a lot of writing. She's a writer unto herself, and that's her background as well. We collaborated on an article for Harvard Business Review where we looked at one of CCM Sun's clients, and that was the French Railroad, SNCF, which is one of the most recognizable sounds in Europe, is their audio brand. They use it in the stations. They use it on the trains when the doors are opening and closing. They use it in their advertising. You name it, it's used, and it's highly, highly recognizable. David Gilmour liked it so much, he licensed the use of it for one of his songs. Every time that song gets played, it reinforces SNCF. There were so many different uses of it. So we wrote an article for Harvard Business Review on it where we actually went through the evolution of it. And you can hear the different sounds on that article if you go on the online version of that article, if you go to it. And from there, we continued writing, and there needed to be a book on the subject because people don't understand it.
I'm Dana Cassell, Big Eye's senior strategist. Every week, In Clear Focus addresses topics that impact our work as marketing professionals, often inspired by data points reported in consumer research studies. At Big Eye, we put audiences first. For every engagement, through our own research, we develop a deep understanding of our clients' prospects and customers, analyzing their attitudes, behaviors, and motivations. We distill this data into actionable insights to inspire creative brand building and persuasive activation campaigns with strategic, cost-efficient media placements. If you'd like to know more about how to put Big Eye's audience-focused insights to work for your brand, please contact us. Email info@bigeyeagency.com.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Larry Minsky, author of the book, Audio Branding, Using Sound to Build Your Brand. Larry, one of the things I like most about the book, and I read a lot of marketing books, is the inclusion of pieces authored by branding practitioners, such as Michael Blumendeal, who's the founder of CCM Song, the first sound design firm dedicated solely to audio branding. Plus, you have articles from ad agency veterans Ben DeSanti and Ken Hicks, but you also include contributions from academic experts, including Professor Charles Spence, a cognitive neuroscientist based at Oxford University, who explores people's associations of musical notes with particular aromas. His article describes really fascinating experiments that pair music with food, often with some surprising results. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'll give you a very basic thing because audio branding is much more than just being a very tactical sales generating kind of thing. There was research done in a grocery store chain where they had French wine displayed next to German wine. And on one day, they would run German music and people would buy more German wine. On other days, they ran French music. And the French wines would sell more. People were asked, well, why are you buying it? Well, this wine is going to pair better with my meal and all that kind of stuff. But what they were really doing was being influenced by the sounds. They weren't cognitively processing the information and saying, well, I'm buying this wine because I heard this French song or this German song or whatever. It just helps set the mood for that kind of product. That example might sound a little manipulative, and that's not really what audio branding is about. We're not here to say, okay, today you're going to buy more French wine or more German wine. It's really about reinforcing the brand attributes, because if the brand attributes are what make people want to buy the product, they will buy the product, or they like it better, or they'll talk about it, or they'll feel better about it. Whatever you need to have done and reinforce the qualities of brand. You have so many different areas. It's why you trust it. And audio branding can help contribute to the trust factor.
Many of our listeners are familiar with the creative process of designing a visual brand identity, for example, using visual mood boards and then refining designs based on some combination of client feedback and consumer research. Can you briefly explain what the creative process for audio branding looks like?
It's very, very similar. It's first sitting down and figuring out, what do you want to convey? What is the brand DNA that you want to send out to the world? And then from there, you go into sound mood boards. It could be existing stuff, but you put it together and you hear, well, here's one direction, here's another direction, here's another direction. What's conveying, what's working? Then you start composing those kinds of things for mood boards and it becomes unique. And then you start researching it and you're saying which one is working and what does it say to people when they listen to it? And then they refine it. It's exactly like doing a visual brand, doing a sound brand. You walk through the same steps, except you hear it instead of see it. Really, it should be just like figuring out what the visual brand is and what the visual brand promises and how you bring it to life in different aspects should be thought of up front. In many ways, and this is another benefit for even a consistent audience, is the licensing fees overall are lower when you have an audio brand. You have to have all the development, and sometimes it depends on what you do in terms of how you get it, whether it's licensed from the audio branding firm or whether you own it all clear out, but you need to make different iterations. But overall, it becomes cheaper and easier to manage. So you're saving money on one end, because if you're doing a lot of TV or doing a lot of radio and you need a lot of sounds, you got to pay for it.
So do you have a couple of audio branding do's and don'ts that you'd like to share?
I would guess the number one do is create one and start bringing your sounds together and making them consistent and aligned and working for your brand instead of helping communicate that your brand is disjointed. Do follow disciplined process. Do it like you would do a visual brand. Think it through. Do the research. Do the hard work up front. Those would be in a very short way, the very main do's. Don't think of it as a jingle. Don't think of it as one-offs. Think of it as a system, and do think of it long-term. Don't think of it as a short-term solution. It's an investment in your brand, just like your colors, your fonts, your logo.
Larry, you balance real-world advertising practice with a parallel career in academia. In what kinds of ways does one inform the other?
Great question. My research, my writing helps me inform what I do. I hope it helps inform other people what they do. My teaching keeps me young. My consulting, my working in the field helps bring back, well, what are the issues out there today? And what can we look at? So it grounds what I do research-wise and writing-wise.
Excellent. We will, of course, include links to the examples that we've discussed today on the In Clear Focus webpage. But if listeners would like to know more about your work, Larry, and either this book or the many other books you've written, where can they find you?
You could just go to Amazon and put in my name, Laurence Minsky, and go to my author page, and there is the complete list of books. My 2 current books are on Kogan Page, audio branding, and then I have another one that just came out on global brand management. So how do you manage a brand that crosses borders? What are the issues or crosses cultures? I have another book, The Activation Imperative, on how do you align all of the different disciplines to drive people down the path to purchase.
Larry, thank you very much for being with us today on In Clear Focus. It's a really fascinating topic. Thank you very much for sharing your insights about audio branding with us.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully you found it just as interesting and enjoyable as I did.
My thanks to our guest this week, Laurence Minsky, co-author of Audio Branding, Using Sound to Build Your Brand. You can find links to the resources we discussed today on the In Clear Focus page at bigeyeagency.com under Insights. Just click on the button marked Podcast. Consider subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you have an Amazon Echo device, you can use the In Clear Focus skill to add the podcast to your flash briefing. Thank you for listening to In Clear Focus, produced by Big Eye. I've been your host, Adrian Tennant. Until next week, goodbye.